So can we be sent the link for that YouTube video because I couldn't find it?
It's in the chat, but I will email it out at the end of today, later today, to everyone. So even if you don't see it in the chat, you'll have it. And the video is published on YouTube.
I only see 3 things in the chat.
Oh, let me
scroll down.
It.
Yeah, I'm looking too. I can't find it either.
Okay, how about now? Maybe it didn't work for scrolling up or something, but I just posted the same link from yesterday.
Oh, now I see it.
There we go.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
good. That's the problem. Okay, so this is day 2 of the beginner FileMaker development class. Yesterday we did fields, relationships, and we started looking at layouts. Today is going to be more layout work. Al gave us a great example of something that's going to tie in perfectly to a review of data modeling and then further layout work. So the first part of today, we're going to be talking about some widgets that you can use to make your layouts better. And we're going to do a tour of the different features that you have in FileMaker and talk a little bit about themes and styles. As before, I really like to start with something really hard where our brains are fresh. So let's talk about this idea. If we're looking at our database and we're looking at like the additional tab, and this particular client has some quotes and some work orders, we can't tell that here. We have to click over to those tabs to see what they have. In this case, they have 0 quotes and 1 work order. The next client, we can't see it, but they have 0 quotes and 3 work orders. So the thing that I want to solve and what I want to show you is how to build, how to modify the tab to actually just count the things in the tab, right? So let's dive in. Here's how you do it. So this is something you guys can follow along. By the way, before I get started on that, this file is hosted, so everyone can actually see this database. And at the end of training, I'm also going to email a copy of this file out to all of you, so you'll have this to play with, to refer to as you kind of go and watch the video and pick apart. I also kind of have the habit of doing extra things on break and after class and stuff like that to kind of perfect it, so you can kind of get an idea of best practices and other features that I've done. Okay, so to connect to it, you can go to File, Hosts, and then you should all add the server.training.directimpactsolutions.com if you haven't already done that. And when you click on that server, you'll see several files, and one of them is called Improved Training. Each of your login is your first name, and the word training is the password. TRAINING, all lowercase, is the password. And then it'll force you to change the password to whatever you want. And that's a good idea to always do that when you host a database. And then that means all of you can play and actually work on the same layouts I'm working on, or make your own layouts, and which we'll get to later when we play through these features. So you have the choice of either making a new layout in this database to play along while we're working, or working in your own file that you already were working on yesterday. It doesn't make any difference to me. Okay, so to get the count of the number of work orders, we're going to start with that. This is a calculation. And remember from yesterday, the place to start a calculation is always Tools, Data Viewer. And that brings up to this window where you can go to the Watch tab. I have a bunch in here from previous trainings. I'm going to add a new one. And all I really want to know is how many work orders there are. So we didn't really get a full tour of all the different calculations. There's hundreds of calculation features. But one of them is super simple. It's count, right? So I want to just do a count. And then it says, what field or fields do you want to count? And what I do is I want to count the number of work orders. So I go from customers to work order. And then you're presented with something that's a little bit vexing, is what do you want to count? So you can't just say count the records in that table. You have to count the number of a given field in that table. And the most reliable one to do is the primary key, which is the work order number. So if you count the work order numbers that are connected to this client, that's the perfect way to do this. So it's count work order number. And then as I flip through my records, I can see 3, 25, 31. So my count feature works perfectly. So I'm just going to grab that, copy it to the clipboard. Then I'm going to go out to my database and go into layout mode. So that's Control L or click Edit Layout. Double click on my tab panel. And then in my first tab, Work Orders, there's a Specify button. And when I click that, I can just paste in my calculation. So it's going to be a string, which is something that's in quotes. And then I have to put an ampersand in to join these two things together. Then when I click OK, I actually left an error in there on purpose. Now, if I just click OK, this is a really annoying feature. It's not going to save it. So I actually have, when I make a change, I have to click Rename to modify and save what I did to the tab, and then it will save it. And so now if I go to Exit Layout or Control B Browse Mode, I'll actually see Work Orders 31. And we can already see my initial flaw. I didn't leave a space. Also, if there's none, is it going to show 0 or, yeah, Work Order 0. And I don't know if I really want to do that, so we'll get to a little bit more advanced calculation. Okay, so first of all, let me fix this. And so I'm going to say Work Orders space, and then the count. Okay, rename, okay. And so now this is correct. Except I want it to be a little bit smarter. If there is none, I actually want to put none in square brackets. So now I'm going to do a more advanced calculation. I'm going to go back up to my tools, to Data Viewer, and modify my calculation. And I'm going to show you something that I don't expect you to be able to replicate, but it's part of the intermediate class. It's a case function, an if-then, basically. So case, the count of work orders is greater than 0, then the count of work orders. So basically that's saying if there are some work orders, then just show whatever number that is. And then I use semicolons to go between. And if there's not, so basically the second line of the case statement says this first one was not true. Then what do? I want to put in brackets none. And then that's the end of my case statement. And I always like to write them on each as a multiple line. So I could even say like another statement that I could have in here, just to make this a little bit clear for how this would work. Let's say that I have like over 20. So if the number of work orders is over 20, then I actually want to put another, I don't want to put the count of them. I just want to put too many. And, you know, the word too many. And so I have test, which is if the number of work orders is greater than 20, test, semicolon, result. Otherwise, test, if it's not greater than 0, but really between 1 and 20, then result. Otherwise, the very last line does not need a test. It's the failover line.
Wouldn't that give you two things? Like if you're saying if it's greater than 20, put too many, and if it's greater than 0, give me the number.
I love that question. A case statement will exit when it reaches the first true line.
Okay.
And that question is so good. There's a different kind of a structure if you actually do want two things, but the way this would work is like this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then if I flip through my records, this one actually has too many, so it's actually showing too many. Several of these. Yeah, 31, 39, 44. Maybe I'll make that over 50. Yeah, so that's 67, but this is only 27. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't put a count function in here. if the count of work orders is over 50, then too many. Otherwise, I don't know how I missed this, but my statement is definitely broken. I don't want to get too into this because there's a ton of things I could do. Oh, and this is clearly broken too because it's actually showing many work order number, because the result is 130,011. I don't even know what that is. I know what it is. I have to put a count in here as well. Okay, so this one has 27. This one has 44, so that's still under 50, so it's not going to say too many. But one of them had a whole bunch. Yeah, this one here has 67. So I'm now going to go ahead and copy this whole calculation to the clipboard. Go back to my layout. Double click. Edit. And then I'm going to paste this whole thing in, like down a little bit. Yeah, so basically work orders, space, and then my other function. And I'm just going to separate it with some space just so it's easier for me to read. If you have extra hard returns or things like that, FileMaker just ignores them in a calculation. So you can use that to make your code easier to read. Rename. OK. And browse. Oops, I hit paste instead of browse. Oh, and you know what? Too many doesn't really work very well because it needs like to be in brackets or something. Just like the none is set up that way. So one more modification, then I'll get off this decidedly advanced topic. But this is some code you can copy and paste if you like it. Okay, let's do the same thing for quotes, but we're just going to make it a little bit simpler on quotes. So on quotes, I'm just going to do a simple count. So first of all, that one's renamed and saved. On quotes, I'll go through the same thing again. Quotes, space, and count quotes. And I'm going to count the ID, the quote ID. OK, rename. Additional doesn't actually have data like that. It doesn't have a portal, so that doesn't really make sense. OK, now that I've done that, now on both of my tabs that have portals on them, if I'm on some other tab, as I'm flipping through my records, I can know what I actually have. And I think that's a useful thing. OK, I'm going to go on to the next thing, which is to build a value list. And then I'll have I call on one of you guys to replicate the really simple counter and to replicate the value list I'm about to show. And then we'll go on to the next part. OK, one of the things we have here in this data is maybe a couple of things. We have a contact or a contract type, like on demand, weekly, monthly. But if I click on this and I go to a new record, I have to just type it, which is really inefficient because I could just make a typo and then it's broken. And so what I really want here is I want a value list of specific values that I determine are the ones that I want. We showed you yesterday the index feature. So if you say insert from index, Control I, those are the three options: monthly, on demand, and weekly. So what I want is a value list with those three things. And here's how we build it. So back to layout mode, click on contract type. And then remember, we have these 4 tabs up here. The rightmost one is the data one, and that's where value lists can go. And then down here, we see control style. So control style gives me several different choices. So edit box is just a standard data entry box. Drop-down list, pop-up menu, checkbox set, and radio button are the 4 different types of value lists we have. And so there are 4 different styles of showing related data. We're going to play with all of them. Drop-down list is the one I'll start with. And then it says, oh, well, now I want to use a value list, so it actually just modifies the interface. And then it says, well, what value list do you want to use? But if I click on the list, there's nothing, so I'll click the pencil. And here's how I create a value list. I click New, and I'm going to call this contract type. So, by the way, a quick aside, a value list like this one, a custom value list, is kind of a little data table for which you don't actually have to go build a structural SQL or data table. Weekly, monthly, and on demand. So all I have to do is just type my values, and I can type in whatever order I want. You can see that they're not alphabetical. Click OK. And then my drop-down list is set. And now if I go back to exit layout, when I go to the additional, I'll actually see that this is a drop-down list. OK, notice that as I go through records, I can either choose something, or if I want, I can actually delete it and type something else. If you don't want the ability to be able to delete it and type something else, then you can use the second style of value list. So I'm going to go back to layout, back to the data tab, back to the pencil. Actually, not to the pencil, but to drop-down list, and I'm going to choose pop-up menu. Pop-up menu, by the way, is what this widget is right here. Okay, pop-up menu. I don't know why one of them is up and one of them is down, because they both kind of do the same thing, but those are the names that they have. And this one gives me a few other choices too, like for example, allow editing, which I'm going to go ahead and check. So a pop-up menu works like this. I can choose, weekly, monthly, but I can't click in here and start typing. So if I click into a field and start typing something, it just doesn't work. The only choices are the ones that are on the list. However, if down the road you add another choice for this list, you've given the user the ability to edit the list. And so if they want to put something in like weekly, monthly, on demand, annually, weekly, monthly, yearly, or on demand. By the way, notice that I'm putting in little dashes. The dash, this is sort of an, undocumented feature. If you put a single dash on a line by itself, it gives you a really nice separator on your value list. And you definitely want to put one at the bottom if you allow editing, so that the edit gets separated from everything else. Okay, I've showed two things now, shown, not showed. Who wants to go take over and build a value list in your copy the solution? We'll start with that one first, and then do the simple modification on the tab.
Sure, I'll share in a second.
In other classes I've taught, I get crickets for a really long time, and then I'm forced to make someone or like pick on someone to do something. So I really appreciate you guys for volunteering. Oh, you found the grid feature. Nice.
Yeah, my boss taught me that one. It's here. Show the grid, and it can snap to the grid too. Okay, so
yeah, snap to grid is useful
list.
For sure. Okay, and new value list. Give it a name.
Who was the third one?
On demand. There you go.
So, yeah, I didn't know about the hyphen thing though. That's really neat.
It's good. I'm going to show you one other feature with this that you might like. Value lists can be automatic. So let's make, yeah, the hyphens are good for that for there. Go ahead and save that one. And there's another field called contracted work. Click in the contracted work. Oh, that's actually a long one. That's not the one that I was thinking. Oh, I know. First customer manager. Yeah, let's say that the manager. There's really not a lot of managers. No, that's probably not the right example because I think the manager is the person who works at the company. I'm just trying to think of which field is a good one to use. Oh, I know. City. So let's make the city field a drop-down list that's smart, but I want to use a different type. Okay, so we're going to go to drop-down list again, and then click on the pencil and make a new value list and call it city. Okay, pause here for a minute and notice that we have 3 features. We have 3 radio buttons. Value list from a field, value list from another file, or custom. Click on the top one, value list from field, and then choose the field city in customers. So what this will do, and then pause there for a second, notice at the bottom you've got include all values and include only related and resort. Okay, include only related is part of the intermediate and advanced class. But for now, we're just going to say all the values in city. And so click OK. And then click OK again. And then click OK again. So we're 3 levels deep down the rabbit hole on that one. Now, when you click on your city, notice that it actually has every single city that's in the database. Okay, click on that one again. And notice that London, Ontario is not there. If you go to the L's, it's not there. Modify this record that says San Francisco and type in London. Just delete San Francisco and then type in London. And then for the state, put an ON. And then flip to the next record. Okay, now notice that when you click in city, London is now on the list. So this is a self-healing value list. This can be a double-edged sword. Okay, click in San Francisco and put a space after the end of San Francisco. So click on it and click again, and then type a space character, and then tab out, and then go to the next record down, or like in the middle of your records, and then click into the city field again. And there's 2 San Franciscos and they look identical. So sometimes these are a problem because you can have illegal characters in there and they're really hard to find. And so, however, this type of value list is also self-healing. So if you go back to that record, which I think was the very last record.
Sorry, the San Francisco one?
Yeah, I think so. That's the San Francisco space. Delete the space. Then click into the value list again. Now there's only 1 because now the record that has San Francisco space is gone. And so the list will automatically grow and shrink as needed based on the values. That's the point I'm trying to make with that one. Okay, do you want to continue and show the tab counter thing, or should I get a fresh victim for that?
Was that the first you did? Because that kind of went over my head.
Oh, well, good. Then I'm going to talk you through it.
Okay. So I guess I should use your file for this, or?
No, you could, but I'd rather I use yours actually, because you don't actually have a tab widget on here yet, so we get to do 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
So go to layout mode. And then you need to add a tab panel. Do you know how to do that?
So this one?
That's the one. And drop it off to the, that's good. And then give it 2 names. One of them is work orders. And one of them is quotes. Click OK. You're going to need to do a couple things that are not, there you go. So move that, make it much bigger. And drag, that's work orders to the, there you go. And then quotes to the quotes one. then you've got a separate work orders one over on your layout as well. You can just delete.
Yeah, I think I was just trying something.
By the way, you notice that vertical line on the edge there? Everything that you put over to the right of that line right there that you're clicking on, everything to the right of that is scratch space. So it actually still exists, it just doesn't show up. So for example, take your 4 Z fields at the top and just move them over there. And then when you go to your layout to browse mode, they're not there anymore. But if you go back to the layout, they're still over there on the side. So this is a very convenient scratch space as you're modifying layouts and working with putting things on or off. Okay, let's count our work orders. So I'm going to walk you through the steps so you can basically do just what I did. So I'll tell you exactly what to type.
Okay.
So, and we're just going to do the simple way. We're not going to do the case statement. So in layout mode, you're going to double click on your tab panel and then click once on work orders and then click specify. Okay, now you're into the calculation dialog box. So first, put a space after the work orders and before the quote. And then an ampersand. So space ampersand, and then put a return in just so you have it on a separate line. And then we're going to use the count function. So type in COU and then hit enter. And that says it automatically leaves your field selected. Leave it selected because when you choose something on the list, when you choose the thing that we're going to count, it'll automatically just replace what's selected. Oh, and you don't want to count quotes. You want to count work orders.
Oh, yeah.
And then count the work order number. By the way, if you counted something else like the date or the team lead or something like that, and there was a record that didn't actually have a value, then it wouldn't contribute to the count. That's why it's always best to count the primary key.
Gotcha.
But also if you counted like the creation date, it would always be the same because creation date always has a value as well. Okay, click OK. And here's the one not obvious step. You have to click rename. If you don't, you'll lose your changes. And that's it. You've done it.
Okay. So this, oh, okay. So it actually shows it there now.
Yep.
Okay.
So
I got lost when you were doing the cases.
Yeah, well, the case one, yeah, you can watch that one later or take one of the other classes, or actually I have videos on that as well on YouTube. Case and let are my 2 favorite features, and they feature prominently in the upcoming classes. They're very simple to use and they're very important to master. And so that's something I stress early on. Okay, I'm going to take back over and, oh yeah, actually I'm not. I'm going to get a fresh victim and we're going to talk about next some of the other features. Who wants to share? Who hasn't talked today?
You can't pick me because I'm using 2 separate devices.
Okay, I won't pick you. I'll pick Susan or Carly or Faith.
I'm taking notes. I haven't made the changes that you've done. So
that's okay. If you want to share, you could, because we're actually going to go to another topic now. And so I'm going to just kind of use you as a, as I talk through what we're going to look at. I'll have you sort of demonstrate the things for the class, and by having you show your screen, it kind of keeps my pace appropriate for class, so I don't go in turbo mode.
I do agree with that last point.
I have found that like when I talk through a feature, but you're actually clicking it, it helps me understand the things that, the things that you would intend to click on because this is new to you, but I know exactly where to click because I've been doing it for 30 years, so it's useful. So are you willing to share?
I guess so. All right.
Thank you. I don't see your screen yet, though.
Maybe it doesn't want to.
Are you clicking that
It's
arrow and then share screen?
Yeah, it's just going with the little purple circle going around.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sometimes it takes a second. Well, if it doesn't want to, then someone else can volunteer.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be doing it.
Okay. Can someone else go?
I'll go.
Okay.
Should I use my well, the one on the server or mine that we used yesterday?
Use the one on the server for this one, I think.
Okay.
Great. Okay, this next segment, we're going to take a tour of the types of layout objects that we have in FileMaker and what they do. We only did a little bit of them yesterday. And we're going to talk about layout parts. And we're going to build a simple report. And so those are the things you're going to teach all of us right now as I'll sit here and talk with my feet up and you're going to show. Okay. So go to layout mode and make a new layout. So to make a new layout, you click that new layout report. So the pencil that you just clicked is how you modify the current layout. But above that, actually manage layouts is one way to do it. And then there's the new layout report button. So just call this one test. And notice that in the top left, it asks you, don't click finish yet. It asks you what layout or what table you want to show records from. And so let's make it from customers, which is the first one. And then it says, oh, okay, what are you making a device? What are you making a layout for? So click on computer once. And then these are the different ones you can make for a computer layout, form, list, table. Click on touch device. And these are the ones you can make for an iPad or iPhone. And then if you click on the print one, yeah, click iPhone, by the way, on the second one. And then notice that it gives you the same choices. And if you click printer, this gives you some other ones like labels, envelopes, and report. So these are all the sort of canned features that we can do. In this case, though, we're going to make a data entry layout. So click over on computer and form. And then click finish. And then we get a blank screen. Okay, we talked about those tools across the top. So right now you have the arrow tool, and that's your selector. The next one is text. Click on text, and then just draw on the layout and start typing something like this is a test. So this is the text tool, and text can be a label, but text can also be what's called a merge field. So click on the text tool again, and then click into it, and then go to the insert menu on the very top and click insert merge field on the very, very bottom, second from the bottom. Choose that and choose customer. Okay, go to browse mode. And that's actually the name of the customer. So if you flip through records, so you're actually using a text widget to show data from the database. But if you use this method and you try to click into Van Buren, you can't edit it. So it's not actually a field. It's just a text. And these are really useful because they merge fields like you've just used them will grow and shrink. And so they're really good for like an address because if there's nothing there, it'll shrink up and shrink to fit. So they're really useful for concatenating or joining multiple things together. Okay, so go back to layout mode and go to the line tool and just draw a line. That's the line tool. It automatically draws them straight or angles or whatever. The next one, and then draw a box. That's your box tool. I'm going to show some more advanced stuff on the box tool. So select, click on the arrow tool, and then click on your box to select it. And we're gonna take a look at some ways we can fill it. And yeah, so there you go. Fill color. Pick a color. Yeah, so this is how you can make like a background behind fields. Pick up a significantly lighter color than that. And then move that box up to where you have this as a test and customer. And notice that it's in front of all that stuff. Okay, so go ahead and put it right on top of both of those things. And go to, and then we're going to put it behind. So there's another feature that I want to show you, which is layers. There you go, arrange, send to back. Now it's behind everything. So these are a really useful way to build areas on your layout that you want to call attention to. So like there's one portion of a screen that's super important and you want to have a color background. I will frequently use a box just like that and put it behind everything so I can see it. Okay, the next widget over is your field tool. So click on that one and then draw a box. And this one immediately says, what field do you want to show? So scroll down and there's a field called contracted work. Make that box even bigger and then go to browse mode. And see that this field shows up all that work. Okay, go to layout mode again and double click on the field. And we're going to take a look at some of the other options that you get. Actually, there's really not a lot of options right there. There's one, which is create label. But one of the things I wanted to show you on this one is that you can also hit cancel. There's some other controls you get on the field. So try right clicking it because I really like that. That was your first thought. So notice that you get some things like text orientation. You can turn it into a button. This is where you can do conditional formatting. But there's a lot of other things that are not here that are important. One of them is, for example, whether you want a scroll bar. So over on the far right, notice you have some other features there. So one of them is show vertical scroll bar. And then the scroll bar will show all the time when you're looking at that field. So if you have a lot of text in it, that will be a really useful feature. There's some other choices you have over there too, like autocomplete using existing values. You can actually allow interaction with the field in find mode and browse mode, so you can actually lock a field out so that you cannot edit it when you're in browse mode, which is really useful for like customer ID, for example. But maybe if you want to search on customer ID, you can. So that's a useful feature. Also, you have some other features too, like what keyboard shortcuts do you want to use to go to the next field? So if you're editing, like in most fields, if you hit the return key, you want that to go to the next field because you don't want a user to be able to do that. Well, I'm not being clear. You don't want the user to actually enter a return, for example, in a name field or a phone number field. So the return character should not be allowed. However, in that notes field, that contracted work field that you're in right now, you maybe do want a return to be valid. So this will allow you to, on a field by field basis, choose that control. So go to Go modify layouts in the very top left where it says layout test. Go to the you one step too far. Hit cancel. Just choose that list and choose the one called customers. And then click on the additional tab. Give me a second here.
What's the additional tab?
Oh, there's 3 tabs on that tab panel. It says calculation, and additional, right? Okay, click on the address field once, and then notice over on the right that you have go to next object when using a tab, but not return. So go ahead and check return. Click on city and do the same thing. Or it was already there? No. Yeah, do it on city, state, and zip. But then in your contracted work field, notice that it does not have that and you don't want it there. So go to browse mode and make a new record. Now click onto the address field and type in 123 main and hit enter. Okay, so that actually went over to the hourly rate field. Now hit enter again. Oh, it didn't actually do anything, did it? Hit tab. And now type in city, like type Portland. And then enter. And then it goes to email. Type in state, type OR. Enter. This actually leads to one other feature that I didn't talk about yet. We'll do this in a second. Type in zip code 97201, enter. And then click into the contracted work field and type in this is a test or just testing, and then enter. Now you're on another line. So this is how you control whether you want the return field to actually either go to a new line or go to the next field. So that was the lesson I wanted to show you. Okay, perfectly. This leads to another important thing, which is, and we're going to slightly interrupt the tour of the fields to show you this.
One dumb question. I noticed, like when you did the address, you hit enter, it went to hourly rate.
That's the next thing we're going to look at.
To go to city.
Yeah, we're gonna look at that right now. Actually, that's a perfect segue. So go to layout mode, and what you're talking about is the tab order. You know, how do you want when you hit tab to go around the fields on this layout? So go up to the layouts menu. So way up at the top, file, edit, view, insert format, layouts, and choose set tab order. Now notice that they're kind of all over the place. So the best way to do this is just click clear all. That erases them. And then what I want you to do is click on the little arrow on address. Now that's the first field, then city, then state, then zip, then contracted work. And if there's things you don't want the user to tab into, you can leave them entirely out of the tab order, which is great. So now go ahead and click OK and go to browse mode. And now hit tab and notice that what it does. So this is how you control tab order. You can either blow it away and redo it, or you can do it surgically to make it work the way you want. For example, go back to layout. Oh, I love that. And then go back to the layouts menu again and set tab order. We're going to make a change. Oh, Susan is modifying the layout. This is another feature that I want to show you. Click on send message and say, get the hell out. It's very important when you're working with groups of FileMaker developers to send rude messages to each other when they're using the same thing you're trying to use, just because it's fun. And so that would have flashed a message up on Susan's screen to which she can't reply. And that's why it's really fun to send read messages to each other. Okay, go back to that thing and see if she's actually gotten to the layout. So layout, set tab order. Aha, now you have control of it. So the other thing that I wanted to show there is she was on the layout making a change, and only one user can be doing any one very small thing at a given time. So 1,000 people can be connected to the same database, and they can all be making records, and they can all be deleting records, and they can all be importing records, and they can be working on layouts and working on scripts and doing whatever they want. But only one person at a time can be on a given record making a change, or a given layout making a change, or a given script making a change, or in the structure of the database making a change. And so that little message that we saw comes up when two people are asking for the exact same resource. Okay, what I want to do is I want to insert the email field so that after you tab out of zip, it goes to email, but before it goes to contracted work. Here's how we do it. Click in email and type 5. So now it's going to go address 1234, email is 5. And when you click OK, it's going to resolve it and automatically renumber contracted work to 6. If you went back in it and looked at it, you'd see that that change is made. So click OK. And then go back to layout, or to browse mode, I mean, and tab through and see the changes made. All right, I'm going to pick on somebody else to continue our tour of layout. You know what? I think I'm just going to take over. Unless someone really, really wants to go. But I didn't get the sense that you were dying to do this. Okay, let's go back to that test layout. We're going to clean this up a little bit. And I'm going to show you some other features on that in a minute that are pretty cool. Okay. So we've gotten through the field tool, and notice that some of these ones have a little drop down over to the right. And so this allows you to make a field, which is one of these other things. For example, I can make a drop down calendar, and then it automatically shows the calendar widget on the field. If I just made a regular old field, and I'm not really making a field, I'm just adding it, I can convert this after the fact quite easily. This just makes it a little simpler. Okay, so we got down here through the value list. We did not actually play with checkbox set and radio button. This is a checkbox set, so it gives you multiple choices of which multiple things can be set. And a radio button is really similar, except only one of them can be set. Okay, but on one of the other choices on this list is calendar. And then the very last choice is concealed edit box, like for example, for a password field. So here's how these work. A calendar allows you to click on this and it brings up a little calendar to type a date. And a concealed field allows you to type something, but you can't see what you're typing. So in other words, if I type in 9/5, I can't see it, but when I hit tab to go out of it, it's going to modify the date to be 9/5. So for example, if you have a social security number or something like that that you don't want anyone to be able to casually look at in your database, you can use the concealed feature and it will store the data. You can report on the data, you can import and export the data, but it's not visible using that particular field. But all you have to do is change it to the other style and then it becomes visible. So that's concealed. Okay, the next feature is button. And this is where it gets interesting because it hasn't been interesting up to this point. Oh, I make bad jokes all the time. The button tool is actually completely superseded by the button bar tool, which came later. It came in a later version of FileMaker. I submit that you should never use the button tool at all because the button bar tool does everything the button tool does and more. So it's just better in every way. There's nothing that this does that this doesn't do, and this has a couple of huge advantages. So by default, when you make a button bar, it makes a 3-segment button. Like so. Okay. Generally, a button tool is going to be to do something like navigation. So when you click on each segment of the button, you can choose what it does. Like, what does it do? But a button also has one other cool feature if you use the button bar, which is the text of the button can actually be a calculation. So let's see. Let's say we want a feature to be able to delete this customer. So I'm gonna, first of all, I only want one button. So one of the first things I do all the time when I make a button bar is it automatically makes 3 segments, but if you choose minus and minus, it deletes your 2 segments. So if you want a single segment button, like a normal button, you can make a button bar and then just click delete, delete. I want you guys to all get really good at that, so you should all practice that one right now. Here's what I wanted to show you. So if I just put like delete this customer, and then say the action is delete, delete record. I didn't actually choose it. Yeah, delete record with dialog on off. Then I'll just get, with a typo, this, and then if I click it, it actually asks me to delete. But if I want to make this a little bit more clear, I can say delete and then the name of the customer. So I'm actually making a quick little calculation. And then I can also add an icon to it. Right. And as I flip through my database, delete Columbus Springs Station. And if I click delete, it's gone. And then there's no undo. That's just that. It's gone. So this can be useful for certain types of actions where you want to actually get information about the data from the database, or any other type of calculation text that you want. Okay, that's huge advantage number 1 of a button bar, because a button cannot have calculated text on the button segment. The second really cool advantage is, I'm going to duplicate this so I have a second one to play with down here, is you can convert a given segment of a button bar between a button and a popover button. And a popover button, when you click it, brings up a little, let's see, I'm going to change the text on here to say show more. Or just like, yeah, show more in quotes. And this is like a little mini layout that can appear on top of your layout. Let's see, I don't want that icon. I'm going to have it be like the info. And then inside my popover, I can add, oh, you know what? I'm going to put contracted work on there just because it's fun. So if I was sort of cramped for space on my layout because it was small, this allows me to add like a popover that would give me all that extra information only if I click it and it pops up into another thing. And then I can start editing it here. And you can have multiple popovers. The one thing that you cannot have is a popover cannot have another popover on top of it. In other words, if I made another button here, this can actually be a button that does something, right? That's perfectly acceptable. What's not acceptable is to say this is a popover button. That one won't work. So in other words, a popover cannot contain a popover. It just won't do anything. In general, any given object cannot contain another instance of the same object. So in other words, on top of a button, you can't have a button. On top of a popover, you can't have a popover. On top of a web viewer, you can't have a web viewer. So those things don't stack, but you can stack unlike types. Let's see. We're coming up on break time any second here, but I'll have a couple more things to show. Tab panels we've already covered a little bit, actually quite a bit, but there's again 2 types of tabs. So one of them is this one here, which we've looked at. And the second one is a slide control. This actually functions the same, except the tabs are sort of invisible little pips down at the bottom, and you can navigate between them here. These are the standard types of tab controls that you'd have if you're building an interface for iOS, like iPhone or iPad. And so if you're making a layout for iPhone, that's what you want because the user can swipe between them. But swipe does not work on Mac and PC. So that's basically why this one is invented, was just for iOS. Conversely, a tab panel like this is not really useful on iOS because they're really hard to tap because sometimes they're too small. And so they're less obvious and less useful. And so, yeah, you really want to use one for one and the other for the other. Okay, then you have portals, which we played with also yesterday. Chart, which we're not going to play with, but this actually has a full charting feature built in. That's not part of this class. And web viewers, which actually is a complete way to build and integrate a web browser inside your database that gets data from a given record in the database. So for example, if you store the website of your customer in a field, you can actually display the website of the customer directly on the customer's information screen, which is kind of cool. Or you can do much more cool things than that with other features of that, but that's not part of this class. I just want to kind of point out what those are. And then we talked about these ones here not really being useful. Okay, the last thing I want to do, and then we're going to take a break, is I want to show you transparency in the color. So we have these 4 tabs up here. The first one is your basic features like the size, object name, and things like that, whether it's visible in printing or not. This is actually where you can say hide when printing. The second tab is your style or your theme. So if you have a theme, which we're going to get to in the third segment today, we'll talk about those. And the third tab is your style within. This is where you can kind of override and do other things. And this one we haven't looked at all yet, so this is what I'm going to do for a minute, and then we'll take a break. So what I wanted to show is you can do a solid color, but you can also do a gradient. And you could do a gradient from like one color blue to another color blue. And you can change its angle. So you can do like a from the middle out, or from left to right, or from top to bottom, or anything that you kind of want to do. And this is, if you click on this little line here, you can choose kind of the line angle. And so you can really build some kind of nice looking features here. You can also click in the middle of the line and add a third color to the middle and make just hideous layout choices. But the thing so let's just actually take all that stuff away, and I'm going to make a solid color. What I wanted to show is this. If you choose a color like this light blue, one of the other features that you can do is the opacity. And opacity is really cool. So I've made this one like, let's make it down to like 20% opaque. If I duplicate this object and duplicate it again, I've got 3 copies of the exact same thing. I can stack them, and where they overlap, the opacity is additive. Right, so I get light, darker, and then darkest. And this can be really useful if you want to build like a really nice looking, like a bar on the left, and then down the left you want to feature in this main first area. Maybe you want to have that just sort of be, you know, empty. And then like the customer name is really important, so you can have that one be stacked. So you can get some really pretty effects by merely stacking the same exact object on top of itself with transparency. So that's a little, I don't know, I like to call that candy because I think it's a really fun feature. Okay, we're going to take a break for 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back and do some really fun work on a review of data modeling. We're going to build some new tables and build a report and go into some other layout features that we were hinting at but didn't get to yet in the first segment. So I'll see you guys in 5 minutes.
Okay.
See you soon.
Has it been 5 minutes? I think right around there. All right, next fun segment. So what we're going to do on this one is we're going to build a sample set of interview questions for clients. Kind of using the idea from Al, not kind of, exactly precisely using that idea. We'll adapt it a little bit. So that we want to ask each of these people some questions. And so I want to have a model for how I would do that. So we need a couple of tables. First of all, we need like a question table. So I'm going to go to the database structure and I'm going to add a table called question. And this is going to be where we can maintain the master list of questions that we ask for people. This one will have an ID. It'll have all these same basic fields for date and created and modified. It needs a question name. So I'll just call it question name. And it needs multiple categories. And this is the thing that we're talking about, where it could have any number of categories. So for example, technical, math, language, something like that. So a couple of ways we could do that. One of them would be we could actually create 3 fields called category 1, category 2, category 3. But that's not so good, because if we want category 4, we then have to modify the structure of a database to make that happen. A better way is to make a new table called keyword. And this is going to be, it's going to have an ID, and this is going to have an ID, a foreign key, to connect to the question. So I'm going to make a new field called ID question. Okay, so this part of it might be a little bit mind warping, so I'll describe it. And if you have questions about it, come back and watch the video, and definitely send me emails and ask me, and I can follow up. But basically, we're building a super simple one-to-many relationship from the question to the keyword, where we can have any number of keywords. And so this really just has one key field called keyword, which is like the category. Just for clarity and to make this even shorter, I'm going to delete these other fields that I don't really care. I don't really care when the keyword got created and who created it. Not only that, I don't even really care if the keyword has an ID. So this is the simplest possible table. It just has a foreign key to say, what keyword is this, or what question am I connecting to? And then the keyword itself is just whatever word that is. Let's build this in sort of 2 parts. So the first part is just going to be the relationship of the question to the keyword. And then on each question, I want to be able to create a keyword. And so this automatically makes a new table, which is the name of the question. And then I'm going to build a portal with keywords. This is all stuff we did yesterday. And I'm going to show just one field in the portal, and that's keyword. The portal is going to have, it's not going to have a scroll bar. The keyword, let's see. I don't think it needs to be a value list. Actually, I think it will make it a value list. I'm going to have it be an automatic one. So it'll be a drop-down list, and it's going to use keyword. This way, if I use the same keyword for multiple different questions, it will maintain that list, and I'm just going to have it be automatic and get its value from the keyword. Okay, so the first question is going to be, Al, I'm going to look to you for some ideas here.
I just
Give me
popped
some.
back. I was dealing with a student for a couple minutes.
Oh, okay. I'll make up some ideas here then.
Well, no, just tell me what you want. Like an
Oh.
interview question?
Yeah, so these can really be any kind of a question. So
Well, I
like,
can give you a general one. Describe your education and experience as it relates to this position.
see, that's actually a tough one for keywords, but we can try it because that's a narrative response.
Okay.
And so we're going to get
These
to
are
that in a
all
minute.
these are all going to be narrative responses.
Well, a keyword is not a narrative, though. A keyword would be like, I use a technique, I use this, I use emotion, I use whatever, I use humor.
Tell me the educational software platforms that you're familiar with using.
That's a good one right there.
Now, I would never ask that in an interview. I would just say, tell me about a time you used technology, successfully in presenting a lesson, and then it's wide open.
Okay, so list of software platforms you're familiar with, and then I don't even know them. Edutane, let's just make up some ones, right?
Google Classroom.
School Pro.
Sure. PowerSchool.
PowerSchool, yeah. Okay, so and then another question would be, I'll just make up some other ones here so we can go fast. Like what are your primary areas of expertise? And then we'll list math, physics, music, art, something like that. And then another one would be, I don't know, like, what's your favorite color?
Or what languages do you speak?
Yeah, that's a better one.
English.
By the way, did you notice that when
English, French, Chip, Cree, Slavey.
Right. English.
We have 11 official languages.
Wow.
Just put Chip, Cree. Those are easy.
Sure. Well, just put a couple in here.
Greek, whatever, it doesn't matter.
So notice that here I made a typo, and notice that it's underlined. So this is kind of one of the other features the FileMaker has, is a built-in spell dictionary. So you can correct it here if you make a typo. You can also modify the dictionary. That's really not part of the class. But okay, so now I just have 3 questions in here. But this is really only part of the data model. And so this is kind of where we can maintain it. But the second part of this is this. We have to have an answer. So when we say, oh, I'm going to ask questions of a customer, I want to be able to store their answers to the questions. And so this is trickier, right? So I have to make another table called answer, where I can track how they choose to answer the question. And so this table is going to have an ID. It's also going to have a customer ID. And a question ID. And then it's also going to contain, just for simplicity, a narrative answer, and then a list of keywords. So these are the 2 things that actually store the answer that we're going to display. And we're not going to get all the way into building out how this works, but okay, so here's the data model. So we have this independent thing that's not going to connect to our main customer area. And then we have the answer table, which we're also going to leave independent down here. And the answer table connects to the keyword. Where the ID of the question in the answer connects to the actual. Oh, I think I did that wrong. Yeah, this actually connects not to the keyword, but to the question. So this is answer question, which is odd, but basically this is where it knows which question is being answered. And then there's probably a whole other area that you want, like a template that you say, I'm hiring a math professor, so this is the template of the 15 questions I ask them. I'm hiring a physical education person, so this is the question I ask them. And so each of those can actually get information from this. So this is kind of how complexity is built bit by bit in a database. So here we have the relationship from question to keyword. Here's the relationship from answer to the question. And then the last one is when an answer gets connected to a specific customer or teacher. And so I'm going to option drag or control drag this here. And connect that to the customer like so. ID of the customer to the ID of the customer. And then allow creation of the answer. And at this point, we actually kind of also, I don't want to get too far into it, but I use a really specific naming convention on the graph because it makes life simpler to know exactly what's going on. And so I'm going to start that now. Each group of table occurrences, I give a code name to the group. So this one is going to be Q. So Q question and Q question keyword. And so this is how I'll describe it. This one is A answer and answer question. I put double underscores. And then just a question. And then up here, I have a lot of work to do. C customer. I usually name everything singular on the graph, but that's just a convention. And then customer to work order. Customer to quote. By the way, doing this breaks nothing, which is great. So all the things, all the layouts and calculations and scripts and any other work that you've done generally are not broken unless you use execute SQL, which is part of the advanced class. Okay, answer. And then this is where it gets more interesting. The relationship from customer through the quote to the quote material and labor items looks like this. It's C quote material and C quote labor. Each underscore is one further table away. And so, for example, if we had like a part number table, that would be over here. And then when we went to a customer, looked at a quote, added a material, that could look up the part number. And a part number might also even have a sub item, which would be over here. So there's no limit to how far you can go left to right. I also recommend, there's two styles that are prominent for building a graph. This is definitely getting more advanced, but I know that a lot of you work with existing databases that have a lot of the structure, so I think it's worth taking a minute to talk about it. Having your table occurrences be separate makes life simpler because the main purpose for the feature of the relationship graph is actually not the default relationships. It's to support layout data entry, layout creation. So as I go here and I want to add the answers for this particular customer, like Columbus, I'll call this customer entry. I'm going to add a portal. And so as I look here, this window right here is super important. where it says show records from, all of the work that I just did and using those table occurrence or the naming conventions are to make this easy to read. So we have two main divisions, related tables and unrelated tables. And as your database grows in complexity, you want to keep the smallest number of things under the related as possible, because the unrelated one can be very long and it always sorts to the bottom. And by using that naming convention, we can see really, really clear exactly what table is connected and how distant it is from the top. So quote labor and quote material we know are distantly related, and they're only valid if I'm also looking at data from the quote. So in this case, I just want to show the answers. And I want to see just the, oh, I actually need a little bit more detail here, don't I? I need the name of the question and the narrative answer and the keyword list. So I actually have a little bit more work to do. I have to actually make a further relationship here. I need to see through the answer to the question. To be able to display the question. I drag any two fields and then do my editing here because it's much simpler. So I want to see using the ID of the question to the ID of the question. So I'm basically starting from the customer and showing all the answers that that particular customer has answered or been asked. And then through to the question table, which question, what was the text of the question that was asked? Because I don't actually store the text of the question here. I only store the text of the answer here. This is not simple. So if you don't get this, don't feel bad. Okay, now I'm going to add a portal and this will make more sense now, I think. Okay, see answer. The first thing I want to show is what is the text of the question? The next thing I want to show is what is the narrative answer? And the last thing is the list of keywords that they chose when they answered it. So, and I'm thinking about there's a bunch of, we're definitely into the intermediate advanced territory for the structure of actually adding these. So I'm going to simplify it a little bit for now because I don't want to spend too much time on it. But let's say that we're going to go ahead and ask all three of our questions to this particular customer number. So this is customer number 46. So I'm going to go to my answer table and I'm going to make 3 records. And each of them is going to be for customer number 46, which I just typed in correctly because my fingers were 1 row too low. And my questions have IDs, and they're probably going to be the ugly UUIDs because that's the default field type that I always use. Yeah, so my 3 questions are these long things as IDs. So I'm going to grab this first one, and we would definitely make a better way to do this. Grab the second one. And then grab the third one. Okay, so now when I look at my customer data, I can see these are the 3 questions that I asked this customer. List the education software, what are your primary areas, and what languages do you speak? I would then build a widget to when they answered when they wanted to answer a question, it would pop up and say, so like right here, I would say like a narrative answer. Actually, I'm going to do even better on this one. I'm going to use a popover. Button. Answer the damn question. And in the popover, I'm going to make it large enough to show the narrative answer and the keyword list. So list the education software platforms you're familiar with. They would click on this and they would start typing. I'm an expert in all software ever made. And then the keyword list, I would build a widget, which I'm not going to show right now, where it would actually pop up and say, oh, these are the particular ones. And when the user clicks, it would then copy those texts into here. And so that's a fairly straightforward thing to build in the intermediate class. So maybe we'll just use this same database. Is the intermediate class next week, a week after? I can pick up on that one and kind of stick with this, so this will be familiar to you. But that's definitely more than would make sense to try to show in the beginner class. But basically, the idea would be this, and then the next part we're going to get to is how to build a report on this, because you said you wanted to be able to search, right? So let's mock that up a little bit. So in our answer table, we're going to grab this question ID. And I'll build some answers. Paste that in. And then I'll pick some different customers. I think, are they all just alpha? I think they're just numeric, aren't they? Yeah, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll just do like a replace command, and I'll just do serial numbers. So now I've got to grab customers 1 through 10. And then now if I was looking at those customers, I would be able to see that they've all been asked this question. List the education software you're familiar with. And if I click on answer the question, I'd be able to go and put in some other, none, some, all, most, many, some. What was the question? So, something like that. Okay, so now I've just kind of mocked up the data a little bit. And to kind of get quickly to the next part, which is how do I build a simple report on this? So that's really kind of the main thing that I wanted to show. Now I'm going to bring it kind of back down. Actually, I think for this next part, because I just totally went through a turbo whirlwind, I'm going to have someone else share their screen, and we'll slow down and actually build this out with this mock data that I just created to create this simple report that shows you how a given set of customers answered these questions. Who wants to take over and do that? Who has not talked today?
I'll go.
Cool, thanks. Do you have any guesses as how we're going to start?
No, I'm a little bit lost.
So this is going to be come super clear here in a second.
Okay.
So here's how we start. We go to layout mode and we make a new layout. So click on the new layout report feature, top left.
Oh, right.
Yep, that one. And then this time we're going to do it a little bit differently. I'm just going to make a list view. Call this one report. And then click on the computer because we're going to make a computer list. We're not going to use report because that's a little bit, it asks you a whole bunch of other questions in the widget that we don't really know the answers to yet. And click finish. And this just makes a super simple list of data. Okay, I think we should have actually based this one on answer though, not on customer. So click where it says customer and choose instead answer.
This one?
A answer is the one you want. Yeah. I'm doing one little thing in the background here to make your life a little easier. Okay. So now we're going to start adding some fields to this layout. And there's a simpler way to do this one. Oh, I love it. You click right to the right spot. In the top right corner, those are the those turn on your left and right panes, which show you the left pane that you're looking at right now has a list of all your fields. It also shows you objects and add-ons. Those are more advanced, but those are some other pretty very useful things. So the first thing that we want to show is actually the name of the customer who answered the question, or actually really the name of the manager at the customer who answered the question. So change the context up there to a customer, and then choose the manager. Okay, now at the bottom where it says field placement, choose the second one from that. So this is basically, are they stacked vertically or are they stacked horizontally? Yeah, choose that one, the second one where they're stacked horizontally, and click it. And then on the right set where you have labels, we want the label to appear above as opposed to the left. So click the second icon of that group of 4. So the first icon under labels there is I don't want to see a label at all. The second one is put the label above. The third one is put the label to the left. And the fourth one is put the label inside. Okay, now just grab manager and drag it out to the layout and we'll see what happens. Good. We'll play with the stuff later. Now where it says A customers over in the top left for fields, we're going to grab 2 more things. So change where it says A customers to a question, I believe. Yes, a question. And we're going to grab in a question the name of the question and drag that out. And put it to the right of manager. Good. And then the last one we're going to do is click where it says a question and just change it to a answer. Very top. And grab the narrative answer. This is pretty dang cool because we just grabbed data from 3 different parts of the database. Okay, one other thing that we've done here is, which we haven't talked about at all yet, go ahead and go to browse mode because we're going to see why this is a little confusing and what we need to change. But we're actually going to see all the data right now for the managers and for the questions that are answered. So go to exit layout. And that's the beginnings of our report right there. Why are the question names not there? question. There's one thing missing somehow, and I'm not sure why. Oh, I see why. I'll just do this. No, they still aren't working. So I'm not really sure why the question name is not showing up, and I need to kind of fix that. But what it is showing is the name of the contact and the narrative answer that they provided. Let me see if I can quickly sleuth what's going on with that. Ah, I see what happened. I made an error in the graph. The question. Yeah, so now the question names are showing up. I had linked it incorrectly. Okay, so we can see that we have some data on this report, but it doesn't really format quite the way we want. We're not going to work on the keyword thing. We're just going to try to make a simple report of like who answered these questions and what were their answers. And then we're going to kind of do this again, except we're going to take a look at a more simple customer report to, like, for example, list customers by city. So go back to layout mode on here. And you notice that on the report, above every single manager and question and narrative, it actually had the label above it as well. And we only want the label to be on top. So grab the word manager, the field label, and move it up into the top navigation area. Oh, and actually this kind of connects to one other thing. Parts. We actually need one extra part on here. So go up to the layout menu. So file, edit, view, insert, format, layout. And we're going to go to part setup, which we haven't looked at all yet. Okay. Click on create in the top right, and we're going to talk about the different parts that can exist on a FileMaker layout. So let's just briefly talk about all of them. Top navigation appears at the very, very top of your layout. And because it's a navigation part, all it can really have on there is buttons and things like that. It never can print. There's also a corresponding bottom navigation. Then you get a title header, which would appear like in a report at the top of the first page. And then you get a header, which appears at the top of every page. Click on that one, and we're going to create it and then resume our tour. So click once on header. And then click OK. And then go to browse mode. So click done. And then now to notice that we have a new area on our layout. And what we want to do is we actually want to move, go back to edit layout and put in manager, question name, and narrative answer near the bottom of the header. So sorry, not those. The fields have to go into the body, but the labels have to be in the header. Perfect. So move all the three fields up towards the top of the body part. You can actually drag a box around all of them and move them all as a group. Get them kind of close. Oh yeah, so what you do is you drag a box around all of them. And then grab any one of them and move it up. And then let go right there. And now use the nudge tool, the up arrow. So on your keyboard, up, down, left, right, you can use the up arrow command to nudge one pixel at a time. And keep going up until it's a little closer to the line. Right there's good. Great. Okay, now your instincts are great. Make the body part shorter by clicking on the line and bring it right up to the snug bottom of the fields right there. Perfect. Okay, now go to browse mode and you will see the results, which should look really good. This is much better because we can really see kind of what this report will look like in terms of like what the answers are. I'll mock it up a little bit. I'm changing the data here in the background randomly to put in some different IDs. In a second here. So now you can see that there's a few different questions being asked. So we could do some cool things on this report, like sorting it different ways. We could search on it in different ways. Let's see. Okay, so let's try a simple search. Go to find mode and type in manager Annie, and just go in the manager field, type the word Annie. So go back to find, and then manager type Annie and hit enter. So this is a list of all of the questions that Annie answered. Okay, go to find mode again. And in the narrative answer area, put in the word FileMaker. This is a list of all of the people who answered a question with the word FileMaker. Go to find mode again. And type in the question name, primary. So this is a simple way to get a pretty complex query by either the person, the name of the question, or the keyword, or the name of the answer, or whatever, in a pretty simple report. And so kind of the point of this one is if you model the structure correctly, you can get really complex report data. And this is really all through two very simple one-to-many relationships. A simple one-to-many relationship from the question to the answer, and a simple one-to-many relationship of the customer to the answer. So like, which questions did Annie answer? And also of those questions, we could rename the text of the question. So for example, if I went into the back end answer table right now, or sorry, the question table, and there's a question that says, what are your primary areas of expertise? All I have to do is edit this in one place and change the word primary to main and put a question mark. And as soon as I commit that, which I'm going to do right now, you'll see that change immediately. And it affects every single answer because it didn't actually store the text of the question for every individual answer. It only stored it one time. So that's the other beauty of a relational database is a given bit of data is stored only once. And if it's related to different places, there's kind of one central area where it exists, and you don't have to do a bunch of replace copy down commands like you would have to do in Excel because everything is redundant. Okay, that was involved. Let's do a much simpler one and kind of a cooler one. Do you want to continue driving, or does one have another victim try to do another report? We're going to build a customer report now and take a look at a couple of other really cool features. Most importantly, sub-summaries.
I'm going to sit back for this round.
Okay, who wants to take over?
I'll take over unless someone else wants to.
First one to speak wins. Okay. So if you start sharing, so
I'm in my own. Yeah.
Yeah, go to the main customer layout, the one just called C_customer. What I would like to do here is inspect the data and talk about how we're going to build this report. And so what I want to do is I want to build a summary by city. So if you go to the additional tab and just flip from record to record, you can see we've got you show all perfect. You did good there. San Jose, San Francisco. We've got a bunch of other ones. East LA, Huntington Beach. Clearly this person liked California. So we're going to build a list and we're going to show customer data on it. And we're going to, our list is going to have two cool features. One, it's going to have a button to change the sort. And two, if you sort it by a couple of key fields, it's going to show a summary of that field. That's what we're going to build. Well, that's what you're going to build. I'm just going to sit here and talk. You're going to do all the work. So go to layout mode. And this is going to be much simpler. So go to new layout report. This time we actually are going to use, so call this one customer report. Click on computer. And this time we're going to use the little walk down thing of the report, the rightmost button on the bottom there. And continue. So a couple of these screens are interesting. So include subtotals. We do not want grand totals. Oh, I'm not even sure if we want subtotals, but go ahead and leave it. But uncheck grand totals. Click next. And so this is saying, what fields do we want on the report? So double click customer, city. We don't really care about the rest of the address. Contract type. And hourly rate. That's good enough. Click next. Okay, this is where it starts to get fun. How do we want to organize these? So what report categories do we want to build? So double click on city and contract type. And then click next. And then how do we want them sorted? So we'll leave those as they are, alphabetical by city and contract type. Click next. Do we want a summary field? So this is like if we have a subtotal, like a total amount of hours. We don't have that, so this is definitely a little bit more involved. But if this was a financial report, for example, a total of orders or quotes or something like that, we could have that field. But you can actually see that there are no number fields in the table, and so it's not even allowing it. It does give us the ability to add one, but it's really just not meaningful. So we're going to skip that one for now. So just click next. Okay, this last part says, what headers and footers do you want? So show the information you want to appear on the header. So in the top left, put current date. Actually, you know what? No, top left, put layout name. Top right, current date. Bottom right, in the footer, we want the page number. And in the bottom left, put in total page count. I think it's at the top of the list.
Is there a total page count?
I think so. Wasn't it one of them?
I don't see it. Do you see it?
I probably made it up. We'll skip that one. We're good enough.
Okay.
Okay. Now click next. Okay. This is saying, do you want to make a report or do you want to make a script for this report? You know, just for fun, let's go ahead and click create script. do not click run automatically. That's definitely gets into a lot of other things. And now we're done. So click finish. So in just going through that wizard, we've created a pretty cool report that shows all of our customers and allows us to do a couple of things. Let's manually sort this by city. So just hit Control S for sort and double click on city and then click sort at the bottom. And notice that we get a sub summary by city. But look how the sub summary cuts off the word a little bit. You see that? Okay, go to layout mode. And let's briefly talk about the parts that we have. Okay, notice in the very top you have header in the little vertical tab. And we actually don't have a navigation header above that one, which is fine. Then we have a sub summary and another sub summary and a body and a footer. Okay, the top sub summary we can see has the city name. Go ahead and click that and make it much wider. Do the same thing for contract type. And our fields are a little bit jammed together. So take hourly rate and its label and move it way far to the right. So shift click the hourly rate. Oh, wait, click Control Z. Undo. Okay, slow down. You've selected the hourly field. Now hold the shift key and click the hourly rate header on the top. Now the two of them move as a pair and they'll stay aligned. Yeah, right there is good. Do the same thing for contract type, but don't move it quite as far over because we want to make it a little bit wider. Okay, move it a little bit more, another inch to the right. And then grab the, leave the two things selected. Okay, hold on. And then grab, it's hard to describe it. Okay, you have 6 bounding boxes. We want to make the whole group wider. And so you grab that one, the middle one on the right. The middle box on the right.
The middle box on the right.
That one right there.
Oh, this one.
If you grab that one, you can make both things wider together.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Not quite that wide. Contract type is actually pretty narrow. It just has those 3 things. It's about that wide, and then move the whole group over again so it touches against hourly. Perfect. The widest field is probably the customer name. But to make room for it, let's move city over to the right a little bit. No, city is actually considerably bigger than that. So this is one of the, this is definitely a, oh, I love it. Great. This is definitely one of those situations where you do a lot of playing with it. You go back and forth a ton of times when you're building reports. Okay, go to browse mode. This is going to look a ton better. Oh yeah, so good. Okay, all of the cities now fit in the header comfortably. Let's try to sort this one. So go back to browse mode. Oh yeah, look, you're making more changes.
I actually noticed that the page number was coming up as a question mark.
It does, because we're not actually printing this yet.
Okay.
We briefly talked about FileMaker's 4 modes, right? Do you remember what they are?
4 modes. So you got, like, you mean the view as, or like edit layout, browse mode, find mode?
Yeah, edit layout, browse, find. Those are 3. And the 4th one is preview.
Oh, okay.
So go to the preview mode is Control U. I don't know. If it's in a menu, I'm sure it is, but that's great. It actually cut off because it didn't fit. So the page number would actually fit and show on the bottom there, but it go to layout mode and stick the page number thing on the left, all the way to the left. And now go to preview mode again, Control U. And now you can see page 1. So go down to page 2 3, 4, 5. You can see your pages.
I see how it works.
Yeah. So clearly we did not build this report to print. So if you go back to layout mode, which you can get to by Control L, there's another really cool feature that I want to show you. Go to, I think it's the layout menu. I'm not entirely sure. Actually, I think it's the view menu. Yeah, in the view menu, show page breaks. Now, what that does is it shows you that little line, and that shows you where the page would break on an 8.5 by 11 printer if you're printing horizontally. Sorry, vertically. Portrait mode. Go to File menu, to Page Setup or Print Setup, and change it, yeah, Print Setup, and change the page to Landscape, not Portrait, over in the bottom right. When you click OK, you're going to see that line change because now you're printing the wide part of the page. And so you can see that it still is not going to fit. Oh, I'm going to show you another really good feature.
I can make it fit, right?
Well, yeah, but we're going to do it in a better way. Don't do that.
Okay.
Okay, draw a box around from there all the way around to all the way to the customer. And I'm going to show you what's going to happen. Go up as well and select your labels. Okay, now what just happened is you selected everything that you touched. And that's not what we want. So I think it's the control key. I'm not entirely sure. Give me a second. I'm a mainly Mac user, so I usually
Oh, it's Shift. Yeah. I just tried it.
Yeah. Is it Shift or Control?
Yeah, to like deselect, I guess.
Oh yeah, that'll do it. But here's another way to do it. Hold it. Just click to the blue there, right there, and that unselects everything. Hold down the Control key, and then draw a box around that same stuff that you wanted to select. Okay, notice that your icon is different, and this will only select all the things that you completely encircle.
Oh, okay.
So let go of the mouse, and now you have exactly the things selected that you want, and then you can move them over to the left. And now they fit. And so now your report's going to fit.
Nice.
The last thing that I want you to do is the header is too tall. So grab the bottom of the header in the blue and move it up a little bit to snug up against. Yeah, there you go. Okay, this is going to be a nice big improvement. Now go to preview mode and take a look.
It all fits now.
Yeah, it's still the font is still very large. It looks oddly small. But anyway, that's what the report would look like if you printed it. Okay, the last thing I wanted to show, and then we're going to take another little break, is what happens if you sort this by the second field for which we made a break. So hit Control S, and then double click on city to unselect it, and then and choose contract type instead. And then click sort on the bottom. And then you'll see this is the whole. So this is what I love about this feature. We just built 2 reports in one. So this one layout, it's actually already 3 reports in one. It's just straight up list of customers if it's unsorted. It's a report that shows you data sorted by city with breaks by city. And it's a report that shows you data with breaks by contract type. So that's 3 things that it does. But there's also a 4th one. And that's if you sort it by both things at once. So hit sort again. And then double click on city as a secondary sort. This is going to not make sense, but go ahead and do it. Click sort at the bottom. Okay, you see what happens here? It says monthly first and then Los Angeles. And so it's a little confusing to read. So click
I see,
sort.
it's doing both.
Yeah, it's doing both. But look at the very top. It says monthly, Los Angeles, Webster, Palm, Montclair. So it's a little confusing. So hit sort again, Control S, and then just change the order. put that one at the bottom and then click sort. This makes more sense,
Yeah.
right? Within each city, break them down by contract type.
Yeah, this looks much better.
Yeah. I'd still probably make another change because we don't really have indication of which is primary and which is secondary. Right. So you can see like Mission Viejo weekly, Montclair monthly. So what I like to do when I build reports like this one is if I have a primary and a secondary and a tertiary, I give them different styles. So go back to layout mode. I keep saying we're about to take a break, but I promise this is the last thing. So click on city, the word in the header. Yeah, that one right there. And let's make it bold. Control Shift B. And then you can also make it larger, but that's fine. That's a different keyboard shortcut. There's actually a font size change, but it's a more complex shortcut. Right click it again and go to, oh, it's actually not there. Nope. So it's going to be only in, it's going to be in the tabs over on the right. So click it. And then way over on the right, you've got those 4 panes. I think it's the third one. Appearance. The font size should be in there. Yeah, make it very bold, like 20. You can also just type 20.
Okay.
Okay, and then click on contract type and hit Control Shift I. And that makes it italic. And then go back to your report again. That makes it more readable. Actually, just go to browse mode, Control B. That's clearer, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why on this first one there's something missing, but I think we just
because there's no data.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what we have there is we have a customer record with nothing in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I can even edit it.
Yeah, you can. You can edit it. You probably shouldn't be able to write a report, but it does let you do it. And like if there's any that don't have a city, those are going to also break. Yeah, there's some like that. Or just one, I guess. Oh yeah, so you just switched to table view, which I find really not very useful. But that's what that does. So you can click exit preview.
I just find it interesting how there's more than one way to view your data.
Yeah, there is. So go to form view. This is actually kind of a good thing that will sometimes breaks. So this, now you're like looking at a report. This would be very confusing because you'd be like, where's all my data? Who deleted all my records? But really, it's just in a mode to show you only one record at a time. Okay, we're going to take a break for 5. And we're going to come back and I'll show you a really important thing, picking up right where we left off, and we'll go to the last segment after that. So I'll see you guys in a few.
See ya.
Welcome back to FileMaker Training. Looking at the agenda, the parts that we're on for today are taking a look at like user management features. So these are the things we actually did at the end of class yesterday. How to upload a file to a server, how to set up sharing. We could spend a little bit of time on that one if you want and talk a little bit more details about it. Or we can go into any other area of FileMaker that you guys are curious about. I guess what I'm saying is we've largely completed the agenda. And so we have some options of other things we can do to really connect this to what you guys need and what you want to learn about FileMaker. And I'm pretty open to doing more layout stuff, talk more about relationship design, talk more about features you can do for reporting, maybe take a small preview into that script that just got automatically created when we made that report. We didn't really talk about themes yet, so we could definitely talk about themes. That's usually part of the intermediate class, but I hinted that I was going to talk about that. Yeah, there's a ton of other parts of FileMaker that we could talk about, but I'm really going to leave it open. So who has ideas or who has something specific that you were hoping that we would cover that we haven't yet?
It's not really a huge thing, and I don't want to monopolize, but you showed us 3 of those 4 kind of questions. One was the list, the pop-up list. I can't remember all the technical names, but there was one where you could choose more than one option, which I'm curious in. So if you had a list there with 4 things and someone chose 2, and then if you did a find with just one of them, how would that all shake out?
That's a thing that I can show in just a minute.
Yeah.
So let me go ahead and do that now. Let's see, what's a good way to do that? Oh, I know. Let's say that we were actually using our answer and we wanted to show the list of keywords that were chosen. So this is a layout we haven't really built out much yet. But if we wanted, so like right now on the keyword list, we have a thing that you could like, just have the text of it. But a better way to display this would actually be using that other value list that we haven't talked about yet, which is a checkbox set.
Yep, that's the one. Yeah. Yeah.
So if we say use checkbox set and we use values from the keyword list, this isn't going to make a ton of sense, but I'll show you why. Because it's going to show all the keywords. So what would be nicer would be if it showed like, multilingual. If it showed only the ones by area. So like English, French, like it only showed the ones that were languages. And so that's definitely something more of the advanced class.
Yeah.
But this is how that feature works, right? PowerSchool, just Google Classroom. And these are really nice because you can do that. Under the hood, what's actually happening is it's storing this data as a text list. So you can do a search by just clicking on it. But you can also have the field visible. I'll put it next to it just so you can see what's going on as a text field. Because what's happening under the hood is every time I click on something, like Greek, French, English, it's building a list of those things in that order. If I unclick French and then click it again, it goes to the bottom of the list. So it's basically just storing things in the order of which they're clicked, which means English, French, and French, English look the exact same over here, but they're reversed over here. But that's how. Yeah,
when you go for find, what happens if you search for French, and can you search for French and English?
Oh, that's a good question. If I do a find and I search for just French, I'll get all the French, and that's 4 records. If I search for French and English, I'll get only yeah, the ones with both French
Yeah.
and English, which I think might be all of them. Let me just choose a couple that are French only and one that's English only. So French and English together is going to give me just the 4 that are both French and English. But here's another cool thing that you can do. You can do a find for French and then a new request for English. And that's French or English.
So if I had a grade category and I wanted English from 10 to 12, I could search under my subject specialty area for English, and then under my grade levels, I would do a new request, and under that keyword list or whatever, I could search for 10 to 12. Perfect.
Yep. Yeah, so it does an OR request where it combines multiple discontiguous groups, basically. So that's definitely a powerful reporting feature.
You have answered my question.
Good. That's a solid one too, and that's definitely part of. So part of it is like development of FileMaker, and part of it is like how can I be an expert user of FileMaker's really cool features to do things like finding data and sorting data, so that you can get reports that are meaningful. Because a big part of getting reports that are meaningful is knowing how to use that search feature. By the way, directly related to this is this little drop down right here, the operators when you're searching. And so by default, when you do a search for something like my answer has like multilingual, some, all, many. So if I search for the word some, it finds the word some in there. But if I say some things are, if I search for the word some, it's going to find both records, right? 2 requests. But if I search for equals some, it's only going to find that first record because the other one, it starts with some, but it actually is not equal to some. In most other databases, when you do a search for like this one, it's going to be an equals. It's going to be an only exact match. But FileMaker searches are always a starts with search. And in this little list here, you can see all the other ones. There's also some other ones like, and so those are like whole word matching and entire field matching. Duplicates would be a good way to find for duplicates if you have like duplicate companies names or duplicate. Let's show that one real quick. So do a find for fields with an exclamation point, and there are no records with duplicate companies. But if I do a find of duplicate managers, I'll actually find, oh, I was sure there was some like that. Okay, duplicate cities. Find where the city is duplicate. This gives me a list of all the 28 records where there's more than one in the same city. So there's 2 records for Hayward, at least, Oakland, San Francisco. You also have ranges, which are really useful in date fields and number fields. So like all the ones that are between, you know, March 3rd and March 20th or something. So you can type in 3/3 and that will give you the range. An invalid is a useful one if you want to find data that's like a date that's invalid that got imported. You can search for a question mark and it shows for things that don't actually fit. And then down here, these are kind of more advanced ones that I hardly ever use. Star is actually one I use all the time. That'll actually find anything with something in it. So for example, do a find for everything that has an email address by just putting a star in there. And there's 47 of my 48 records that have an email address. And if I click on this little guy here, that inverses my found set. It reverses to the ones that I searched for to the ones that I didn't search for. So those are some more advanced find. Okay, that's a good one. Who else has questions of things that we didn't cover yet? Or features that you really want to see?
I have, it's not really important, I'm more curious, but when you create new tables, you have a default fields and with default names and whatever. Can you customize those default fields for whatever your standard is? Or
You can actually. So there's a file stored inside your application installation of FileMaker that allows you to customize exactly what fields get made when you make a table. There's a blog article on the AppWorks site for exactly how to do it and where that XML, I think it's either XML or JSON file is stored. I think it's an XML file, where you can just go and modify and change exactly what fields get made, what they're named, so that it saves you some time. Like you noticed every single time I made one, I changed the field to ID.
Yeah.
And then I don't ever use these names either. I always use Z underscore. Like my standard is Z. Z created TS for this. That's how I always name it. So but I didn't go ahead and modify those defaults here, but yeah. Try Googling for that on the AppWorks site for that blog article. Resetting the default fields for table creation FileMaker, something like that. Which should actually find that article. It was written by Michelle at AppWorks.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Throw me questions. I love this.
So I had a question about configuring user accounts.
Configure user accounts. Yes.
Yeah. So like I'm trying to make like an inventory system that might work, and I want it so when the person logs in, they only see records relating to them. They're not allowed to see anyone else's.
I love that.
I don't know if that's too advanced stuff.
No, that's actually part of the agenda. It was some stuff that I didn't think was going to be that useful. So I'm glad you bring it up because now I get to, tick that box. If you go to Manage Security, let's make a test user. So all of you are all full access users. I'm going to make a new user called Test, and I'll make the password training. And I typed it wrong. Okay, so we're training, and I'm going to make a privilege set that only allows this user to see records if the city is San Francisco, just arbitrarily. So I'm going to go to Advanced, and I have to create a special privilege set for this, which is actually super easy to do. I'm going to duplicate the one called Read Only, and call this one Limited. And so this is where the basic settings down here is how can they, what platforms can they use to log in? And then up here, we can limit them to only specific records, layouts, value lists, and scripts. And the magic that you want to get to is right here in records. And so I'm going to choose custom. And this is where we can say, what can they do? So I will allow them to view and edit everything in all of these tables and create, but not delete. And we're going to put one further limitation in the customers table, and we're only going to allow them to view records. And we'll click limited down here. Okay, so just to keep track, I'm gonna go all the way back out of this for a second and show you how far. This is the farthest we ever get down the rabbit hole in FileMaker. So manage security, that's rabbit hole 1. Advanced, rabbit hole 2. Limited, edit, rabbit hole 3. Custom privileges, custom, rabbit hole 4. Customers, view, limited, rabbit hole 5. That's as far as it gets. This is the deepest of anything I know of in all of FileMaker. And those are all fairly straightforward, but I just wanted to really point that out. And so we're going to say if city equals San Francisco, or is empty city. In those two situations, the user can edit a record or view the record. They can't even see it unless one of those two things is true.
Is that case sensitive? What if someone had data entered it as San Francisco with a small f?
It's not case sensitive.
Okay.
So it actually would work in any way. There's the number of things that are case sensitive in FileMaker is very small. So almost everything is case insensitive. Passwords, by the way, are case sensitive. Okay, so to really see how this works, I have to put the user in that limited group. Okay, if I log onto the database and I go to my customer report, I can see everybody. Oh, remind me to come back to that because I wanted to show how to limit these. So I can see everybody, all cities. I'm going to close the database and reopen it. Improve training. And I'm going to log on as, please tell me I called that user test. I did. Okay. Now if I'm going to go to my customer report, this is a little weird because it shows me all these records I cannot access. And I really don't like that. But if I try to do a find and just say, show me everything, like show me star. Now it actually says, okay, these are all the records you can see. So I would really want to modify the database so that upon opening the database, it does a query, and that automatically then limits me to only the records that I can see. In this class, we didn't really talk about a dashboard, but normally you would actually never have a database open up to data. You'd have it open it up to a menu, and then on the menu, you'd have some buttons and some features. And so it's useless to ever open up a database and to see some particular customer that's like the first record in the file. It's useful to just have a dashboard of like, here's today's activity, here are the tasks assigned to you, here's the whatever kind of interesting report that's useful, like number of logins today or new questions answered or something like that. Here's a button to list all of the active customers or whatever. You can have some things like that. But that's part of the other classes, not the basic class. But we're logged on right now as this basic user. So I can only see certain records, and I cannot go into, I can't go in and modify anything in the database, right? I can't go to the database structure. I can't change the security. I can't delete records. And if I create records, it actually did allow me to do that. Yeah, that's right. I allowed it to create a record. But here's what's interesting. If I make a record called Joe Jones, and I make the city San Francisco, I'll be able to see it. If I change the city to San Mateo, and then I click out of it, boop, I no longer can see that record. So you have to be a little bit careful when you're using security to not allow a user to edit something that then makes the record invisible. So I would imagine you would have some different criteria for that's not arbitrary like the one example I just chose. But yeah,
I was going more for like people's names, but I get the idea. Just seeing in practice.
Yeah. So if it's a person's name, like they're a rep, like we have a sales rep, don't allow them to change the sales rep. So like a sales manager can choose a different rep, but a sales rep cannot add themselves or delete themselves from a given account, for example, if that makes sense. And then I can just close this file and reopen it as admin and continue back to editing. Beautiful question. Thank you very much. I'm glad we talked about that. All right, who else has one? We're on a good run. I want to have everyone ask me a question. We have time. I know you guys have questions. Be bold, ask them.
So here's a scenario. I don't know if it makes sense or not, but let's say you put a checkbox under a customer record or wherever you would put it that says like as a default, like they've defaulted on paying before, and so when I want to run my report, I want to exclude them. If that box is checked.
Yeah. So like defaulted, so like bad credit.
Well, it default everyone to good credit, but when you're going through and you check it off, if I'm running a report, don't even include them.
Right. So you would make, here's how I would structure that. Actually, this is kind of a good lesson. I'm going to make a field called bad credit, which means they're at a credit risk.
Yeah.
If the box is checked. And I'm going to make it as a number field. This is introducing a concept called a Boolean. Boolean meaning true, false, 1, 0.
Yep.
And so that feature, the field now exists in the customer table. I'm going to go to my additional area, and I'm going to add it right up here called bad credit. And the way that I'm going to structure this is I'll just go ahead and set it true for a couple of my people. But I don't want you to actually type a 1 in here. What I want you to do is actually check a box. And so here's how that checkbox is going to work. It's going to be a checkbox set. And the checkbox set will use a value list. And the value list is just going to be the number 1. So this one value list, which is basically just 1 or not 1, can be used across your whole database for all the places where you want a checkbox to be checked. So now I have the ability to go through the database and say, oh yeah, this is a bad credit. Except you know what you really don't want to see? You don't want to see that number 1 on there. So what you would do is just make this less wide until the number 1 doesn't show. And now you have your solution. So that's a quick way to do a Boolean. And then you asked, when I do a search, for everybody who's like in California, I want to omit all the ones who have bad credit. You would really probably script that, because the way that it would be done would be, if I just do a search for California, that's going to be 48 of my 49 records. But if I want to omit the ones that have bad credit, it's actually going to be a second request, a new request, where the bad credit is omitted. So I can choose don't include those, but omit those. So in other words, the first request is everybody in California, and the second request says accept those with bad credit. So if you do a second request that's an omit, then it is not an or search. It's actually an and search. So it's a little bit complex, a little bit, but this is how it works. And if I do find, it's going to now say there's 42 of 49, because the only other ones, all the ones who are not part of this set are either not in California or have bad credit. And so if I switch this, I can scroll through those records and see. Here's one where there's no state. Example, Oregon. You know, I'm going to modify one of my other records and make them Montclair, Washington, you know, Portland, Oregon. So if I do my same exact search again, by the way, Control R does a re-find. It re-triggers your same original search. And now I'm going to get fewer records that match because I've modified my data. So if I switch to the other set, I'll find the ones who are, here's an Oregon with bad credit, but even Oregon with good credit would not be part of the list. Yeah, so that's good. That's how you do a Boolean in our checkbox. You know, we didn't really cover radio buttons yet. But like the contract type, another way to view that same exact data would be as a radio button. Where it would show you all of your choices like so, and only allow you to choose one of them, right? So this is kind of nicer because you can sort of visually see it, but it's only kind of good if you have if the set's not too large. You don't want to have like 30 things on there. For example, if you've got terms as either due on receipt or net 30, and those are the only choices, that would be less clicking for the user than a drop-down list, right? Because this is exactly one click to change. Whereas this is 1, 2. You know, always 1, 2 to change it, if that makes sense. But bad credit, 1 click to change. So that's how those work. Who has not asked a question? Who has a question? Faith. Phil. Susan.
Is there a way you were showing the reports? We just saw the reports that were totally in columns. Is there a way to make the report just a little bit more interesting and have like maybe a bar chart and several different kinds of charts with it? Maybe a pie chart included with it with just different types of data?
Yeah, that's not part of this class, but FileMaker has a feature to make a chart. Actually, there's kind of an easy way to do it. Even you can go. I'm trying to remember now. Layout. When you're in browse mode, there's a quick way to make a report. I'm trying to remember how to do it. It's not something I do frequently. But there's a menu choice that actually can create a report on the fly. I think it's maybe if you're in table view. Trying to remember, sort, find. Yeah, it's not that. I don't use it often, but there is the short answer to your question is yes, there's a way to do that. I'm not seeing this feature, but I know there is a way to make a report out of this. Is it here? Quick report chart. Yeah, so here you go. I can make a chart with a click by hourly rate, and that's going to create a layout with whatever kind of a chart that I want. So like pie, and break down my customers by their hourly rate, and then I can click Save as Layout.
And that was where?
It's only available. Well, there's the easy way to do it is if you're in table view, which I rarely use, and if you click on the little sort feature, there's a thing that says chart, and then you could create one by that, but whatever column you're clicking on. That will then short circuit the process of doing this manually.
That one of those on a page with different data?
Yeah, you can. You can actually modify this to have it line by line. Honestly, I don't usually use FileMaker's native chart features because they haven't really done much to improve them in the last many versions of FileMaker. I usually integrate with Google Charts or some other chart engine that are more flexible. There's actually another feature in FileMaker which is called add-ons, and add-ons includes a chart feature and some other views that are more advanced for FileMaker. So you can make like barcode generation, calendar view, and a simple chart. And these all use JavaScript and more modern ways to do it. That's not really part of this class, but these are things you can play with. I've actually made some videos on these on YouTube as well, so you can search for those. These would be more closer to get what you want from what you're mentioning, to give you a little bit more rich type of a report where you're looking at a given, for example, what's a good example? Like your customer report, where you have, rather than having the details of every individual customer, it would just say, oh, in Oakland, and it wouldn't list the specific names of them. It would say, here's a breakdown of the total hourly rate of customers by contract type in a visual way.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Pleasanton, here's the data. Portland, here's the data. San Francisco, here's the data. Rather than just, a static list of customers like this one.
Okay, thanks.
Hope that's a good enough answer for you. Like I said, by the way, I'm also happy to stick around after. So we have 15 minutes left, but I'm happy to stick around for 15 minutes after if there's any other more advanced, any topic at all in the FileMaker world, I'll happily talk about. And including taking a look at your database that you work with daily, which is, because I think maybe all of you actually have other databases. You're not just starting from scratch. Well, a couple of you I think are, but most of you actually work on databases as part of your life. And if there's something that's vexing or you've been curious about in that database, you can share your screen with that program and I'll take a look at it and answer questions about it.
I have what might hopefully be one last quick question. Let's say I want to clear all entries in one particular field out of the database. What's the quick and easy way to do that? So it's the new year. I want to start everyone fresh. There's not going to be anyone without bad credit. I just want to zap that, clear all those fields.
That's the replace command.
Okay.
So it's like a copy down function in Excel. Here's how you would do it. And this is a really good quick one. You would find and then click on all your bad credit and then perform find. This would find all the 5 that actually have bad credit. Mm-hmm. Then you click on, this is a little weird, but you click on one of them to deselect it and immediately hit Control equals. This is a very dangerous dialog box. So anytime you use this one, use it very carefully and maybe even read it out loud. Permanently replace the contents of the field bad credit in the 5 records with nothing. When I click this, it overwrites all of them. And so if I do a new find for bad credit, there's nothing with bad credit. So that is your answer.
Okay.
And that was a quick question. Who hasn't asked one yet? I'm not keeping track of everyone.
I guess, how does uploading and sharing files work?
Yeah, so how uploading and sharing files works. So here's how that works. Uploading a file is actually done through FileMaker. So you go to the file menu to sharing, and you say upload to host. So you have to have a FileMaker server configured and working to do this, but we have one in the class. I have my credentials I have to go look up. So when I sign on, this will allow me to choose the folder that I want to put it in. And then also allow me to choose what file I want to upload. So if I want to like post this file to the server, I can do that by clicking it. I guess I can put that one out. I don't know if I really need to. And then it would check the consistency. I don't actually want to put that one up, so I'm going to cancel that. But that's the process for uploading a file. And then once it's on the server, when you go to File, Manage Security, or sorry, File, Open Hosts, Show Host. This would list all of the databases on the server that you can see. And then if you've got multiple servers, it'll show you files on all of those servers. So here's another server that I have some databases on. And so you can kind of see what those are. There's a bunch of them on that one. I probably have files on, I don't know, 100 servers around the world that I can access. Was there, what specifically are you curious about in terms of hosting a database and on a server?
Just curious about it. Just in case like I need to share like with another coworker or something, or if I need help, or then it can just be a shared database.
Yeah, in your organization, you do have a FileMaker server, right? With your databases on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the best way to do it would be those steps, right? So after you get it secured, by the way, before you share it, you have to go to manage security and make sure that there's actually real security. You can't have any accounts that don't have a password. And then that's step one. Step two is you have to go to sharing and make sure that it actually has this box checked or one of these boxes checked to be able to share with specific users. So here I can say, I'm only going to allow full access and the limited, but not these other two, for example. Like, you have to think a little bit about who actually is going to have access to it. Then you can upload the file to the server, and then it should live on the server from then on, where it automatically gets backed up, and it's controlled in a really good, efficient way.
Awesome.
I'm definitely a fan of only working on files hosted on a FileMaker server. I don't think it's a good idea to work on local copies.
Yeah, it's really hard to keep track, especially if you have like a really updated version here. At home, you don't.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, yeah, if it here at home, like everywhere that you have access, if the file's just on the cloud server somewhere, it's and you've got a good enough password on it so you know it's secure, that's just a better way to do it all around. Are there any other questions related to layout widgets or parts or things that we didn't, that you're curious about? More stuff on calculations, conditional visibility or conditional formatting? Anything related to that?
I have a question about the add-ons, because I just found out about that like last week, specifically about like the barcodes. Is that like going to be like a growing list of things?
Yes, there's only a handful of them right now. I think those 9, but that's a growing list. You know what? I'm actually going to go ahead and put one on just so you can kind of see how dead simple they are to use. So on our test layout here, I'm going to make this taller, and let's add a QR code that shows some customer information so you can see how this works. So I'll go to add-on plus choose barcode generator and choose. And then all I have to do is drag this out here. I don't know if this can do a QR code or not. Is this going to work for me?
I'm not sure if it does QR codes. Definitely does a lot of barcodes though.
Yeah. Barcode configurator. It also didn't seem to work on that layout for some reason. It's always nice when that sort of thing happens. So test. That's good. It's not working. I don't know why. Let's try a different one. Timer, maybe. Yeah. So for whatever reason, timer works, but barcode didn't. I don't know why. Oh, now it does. It just took a second. So when you click it, you would click this settings icon, which pops up this thing that says, what source field do you want? Now, what is the field that you're actually wanting to barcode? And then what's the image field that you want the barcode to go into? So you would actually need to have a field that actually is the right one to map. I think if I go into the barcode area, let's see, charts. It didn't seem to make it. Let me add a field in customer called image or barcode. And yeah, this one does not support QR code, so there's another way to do that that do. So I'll go to my test layout and drop a field on there, which is my barcode field, which will store the graphic of the barcode. And then I should be able to configure this to say the source field I want to be, actually what I really want it to be is the customer ID, but that's not on this layout. Let's see if that works. Yeah, no, of course it doesn't. And then the image field is yeah, this is not working right now. So code 128.
I think the customer ID wasn't working because it was like concealed. It was, and I think you need the container field as well.
Yeah, well, the container field is there. This one, these can be kind of complex. So and then, the law of demos is something always goes wrong. What this is supposed to do is just show you the fields that are on the layout. Optional background color. And then I would just be able to choose the barcode source, which should be the customer ID. And then the image field should be the barcode field. Those are actually both definitely on this layout. It's just not allowing them to work. So right here is my ID, and right here is my barcode. Oh, you know what? Barcode's text. Let me change it to container. Maybe you were right about that. I think that's what you just said, right?
Yeah, I think the other one's concealed too. I've never messed with concealed. I just learned about that recently. So.
Oh, well, the ID is not concealed. It's just a regular old serial number field.
Oh.
That's just this one right here. And so that's just like, oh, you're right. It is concealed. That actually shouldn't matter though. But let me change it. Yeah, it still doesn't show it.
Well, I'm stumped now.
But this does show this. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so it's still not doing what I want it to do. Yeah.
I think you're just there. You just got to press the button. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, click on the button then, and it actually does generate it. Settings, code 128. UPC is a nice short one. Let's try that. And so then, but it's actually converting not just the customer number field, which is the one I want it to do. It's just not showing that. It's only showing me customer contracted work for whatever reason. But then if I click this, it's converting it. Yeah, couldn't do it because it's too much text. So this is short enough to actually go into a barcode, but the field that it's trying to actually show is contracted work, which is a huge amount of data, which is not even on this layout. Right, that's this long field here. So if I said contracted work, and modify the value to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that should be able to be a barcode just fine. But it still gives me an error. I don't know why.
I guess the feature must be new, but it is definitely good when you get it going.
Yep. So I don't want to fight with that one too much, but that's actually the most trouble I've had with them. I've had some issues with them before. Part of it could be the way this training environment is configured. There's a lot of different things that are different about it. FileMaker normally on your computer is going to be different. Let's try one that's more likely to work. This is just a timer. And this one's pretty simple. It just basically has a start and stop timer, and it just counts. And it does it record by record. So like on this record, I want to start it. If I go back to the other one, it has its own counter. And it'll track counters for any number of records, which is kind of cool. And then just
you know
wait.
what happens when you just like turn off the file with it going? I guess it wouldn't be counting.
Let's see. I'm not sure. So let's see. So record Elm Greens is counting right now. It's at 20. So if I log out of it and then open it back up again. And then do a search for Elm Greens. It's not counting.
That kind of makes sense, though.
It did stop, yeah. So this is JavaScript. It's, you know, its data is not. It didn't actually have to modify the database in any way to create this counter. It didn't have to create a field in this table. So this is this feature's pretty minor, but it can actually log data to your specific database and then write data. So if you create these fields, it can do that. Oh yeah, look, this one actually has all of the features now, which makes me wonder if this one is going to now show. Nope, it still is not showing fields that I want. So I'm not sure what's up with that. Anyway, so yeah, I think it's really great to play with those, but that is a fairly new. I think those came in version 19.2, 19.1, and we're at 19.3 now. So they're definitely very new, and they're gonna be greatly improved and added on. You can actually even make your own and share them with people. At AppWorks, before Direct Impact merged with us, we had a few of them like that. So it's 1 o'clock. So the official end of the class is now. Like I said, I'll stick around, but I want to definitely say thank you to all of you for attending this class. I think it's been really fun to learn and share, for me to share all the things that I love about FileMaker. And I'll stick around until for another 15 minutes and let you guys answer any questions as advanced as you want them to be.
So is there a way to do a date stamp if you're doing an entry like into a container with a bunch of notes where you just make kind of like a narrative to date stamp those?
Date stamp notes. I like that question. So you're talking about like if you're looking at a customer and you have different notes that come in like every time you like a running commentary?
Yes.
This is something that I do very regularly in databases, and I'll show you how I recommend you do it. So you could have one big notes field, kind of like this narrative.
Yeah.
And then at the top of each one, you could just put like the date and time, like so. But that's not very good because it's sort of hard to track. And then you could just kind of edit it and delete it. You know, it's not a record. The way that I recommend doing that is this. You add a table called notes. And in the table, it has, it automatically has your timestamp field for when the note was created. And then you'd add a field to this called note text, which is a text field. And then maybe a field that says who did it. And then I sometimes put other ones like, was it done or not? Does it need to be followed up on or not? What's the follow-up date? Other things like that. But the very minimum, you have these things. And then, of course, it has to have an ID of the customer, a foreign key. Then you would connect this one on the graph. by dragging a relationship here from customer ID to customer ID and allow creation of records. So this is the same kind of portal that we've done a few times in class, and this is another great example of it. I'm going to add another tab called Notes. And I'm going to add a portal to that tab, which will have allow scrolling, which will have the timestamp that it was created, the text of the note, and who did it. And I'm going to sort it in reverse order by timestamp. So sort by timestamp, but backwards, ascending. And then when I add a note, like call to follow up, and then add another one of like, make sure to inform Rita of changes. And that one's going to be assigned to, made by Josh. This one, and then that automatically goes to the top because it's the most recent one by time. And then usually I do a tricky way to create these because I don't really like making them by clicking to the bottom of the portal. Because when it gets to the bottom, when you get down to this line here, now how do you make one, right? So it's not obvious that to make your next line, you actually have to scroll to the bottom and then put one in. So I never do that. So here's how I do it. And now we're in advanced territory. I'm going to uncheck allow creation. And I'm going to make a new field. And this is something you can watch in the video and think about, called G note text. And this is going to be not a regular stored text field, but I'm going to go to the storage and click on this box, which we haven't even talked about, which is global storage. And I'm going to stick that field here at the top of my note area. And I'll say placeholder, make a new note. Okay, so to show you how this works, if I type something into this, if I scroll through my different records in the database, that text just sits there. So it's actually not part of any record. It's just text hanging out in the user interface. So the next thing I do is super advanced. I'm going to put a script trigger on this so that after I click out of this note, I'm going to do an on object save, which means I clicked into the field, I typed something, and now I clicked out of it. I'm going to make a new script, and we didn't talk about scripting at all because that's part of the next class. And this is going to be called make a note. And what it's going to do is it's going to go to the layout, the notes layout that got made automatically. And it's going to make a new record. And it's going to set the text of the note field. The note text to that global field that I just made. There's a whole bunch of stuff here that you don't have any context for, but if you follow these steps, this will work. And then it's going to go back to my original layout. However, there's one other thing that it needs to do, which is it has to actually have the foreign key. It has to have the ID of the customer. So I'm going to use the set variable command to grab the ID of the customer before I leave the screen. And then when I'm over in the notes area, I'm also going to set the foreign key to that variable. This will make so much more sense after the next class, but so you might have actually seen some of the stuff if you've looked at scripting. So this is an example of a really, really simple script. I think that actually didn't work. Yeah, so I put a comment, and that's what it's going to do. And then at the very end, it will clear my my global field. So it sets that to nothing. Okay. So now, if I'm on a record like this one and I want to make a new follow-up note, this should actually run that. I'm going to introduce you to one other advanced feature, which is Script Debugger. We played with Data Viewer, but Script Debugger is another really good one. This allows me to watch this code get executed line by line. And I can look at it one line at a time. So it first grabs the ID. And so there's customer number 11. Then it goes to the note layout, makes a new record, sets the customer ID, sets the text of the note, goes back to my original layout, clears my note text, and now I have my note. So I can also run that one without running debugger. Now, what's going to happen here is it's going to go away from my notes tab because it's not my default tab. So as soon as I actually hit tab out of here, that script executes instantly. And if I come back to my notes tab, it's back here. Well, while we're talking about advanced features, tabs have names. Every object has a name. So I'm going to give this object a name. It's going to be called note. And then in my script that I just made, called make a note, it's going to do one last thing. It's going to go to the object called note. So there's your intro to scripting. So now, in addition to making my text note, now it's going to come back to this layout and go to the same tab because it's not the default tab. There you go. And then your note is the top record. So that's my preferred method for making a date stamped note.
Oh.
I've done it 100 times, so I can do it in 5 minutes. But yeah, it might take you a little longer the first time. But yeah, follow those steps and that should work for you if you don't have a feature like that in your system.
That looked hard, but it looks super useful in the end.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few moving parts, right? So you have a global field, which is a new concept. You have a script, which is a new concept, which is procedural code. And this is really where the power is in FileMaker. And this is, so the intermediate and the advanced class is where we spend a lot of our time on scripting. And that's it. Those are kind of the two moving parts, right? So a global field where you start the process, and then it's kind of navigating, it's doing things that you would do manually, like go to the notes area, make a record, type customer ID 11 in, put in Matt as the person, say this is a test, and then go back to your customer, and then go back to your notes tab, and there's your note. So it's just doing all of those manual steps in a blink of an eye automatically.
Is there a way to automatically put the person who's entering the note in there as well?
Yes. So all you have to do that is right here, make another set field line, and you would say set the field of the who to the current username.
Awesome.
Get account name. Right. So like if this will actually work for you right now, if you're logged on to this database and you navigate to the first record, Bryant Research Park. Making a test note. If you went in and made a note in, it would put your username as the person who did it. I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to make this go to the next field if you hit return. Yep. So that's a pretty simple way to do it. It's also noticing it's actually putting it into the timestamp. And I don't have any labels on here yet, so. Yeah, did you make one? Yeah, you did. That's how it works. Okay. I love these questions. And boy, that was, you definitely met my challenge of asking me something that's more advanced than the class should be. But I've got this one well oiled, having built follow-up systems in a lot of places. There's a couple of other follow-up things to this one. Like notice that on this one, it only shows one line. And so there's some more advanced techniques of showing like the line height, however tall it needs to be, which is pretty cool. By the way, there's an add-on feature. One of the add-ons actually kind of does stuff like this too. So that's another kind of way to do this. That one has a kind of a more graphical with like little bubbles.
Yeah, we would need more lines than just one.
Yeah, and so one way to do it is to just, show 4 lines here or 3, and then just make them taller. And then you can just make this taller or make it a different font size or something. But then all of them are that height. I like to build it so that there's sort of 2 modes. Well, these are also editable directly. So you can make them not editable, and then have them not use a portal to show the data, and then have it be any whatever height is, that'll just show you that height. Unless it's like really long and it will cut it off at a certain. So those are more advanced techniques to do that, but I've used those frequently too.
A question for another day.
Yeah, well, next class.
I know.
Well, I have to run, so I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. I would be interested in that scripting course, but definitely not in 2 weeks' time. I have a lot of digesting to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe in a couple months, I'll be ready to take a look at that. But I look forward to reviewing the videos and going through this at my pace. But thank you very much. I've got a good idea of what I want to do and where I want to go.
Great.
Take care, everyone.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Any other last questions before we wrap?
So this is just a general question. When is that next course that he was talking about?
I'm actually not sure. I don't do the scheduling for them.
Okay.